This is ILTA Radio, the source for legal technology practices and ideas to help your career, delivered to fit your busy schedule. ILTA Radio, get tuned in.
Hey guys, this is Jim Moreo from Cornerstone.IT. Welcome to ILTA's podcast on getting to know what's inside M365 and O365 licenses. Again, I'm Jim Moreo with Cornerstone.IT. We're a solution provider to the legal industry. We do a lot of Office 365 and Azure implementations, so we're intimately familiar with Microsoft licensing. I'm also supported by some folks that are some subject matter experts. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Thanks, Jim. This is Kyle Rhodes with the Microsoft team at Ingram Micro. Position is a solution sales executive surrounding modern workplace as well as Azure. So really excited to be part of the call today.
Hey, thanks, Jim. I'm glad to be here. My name is Gittens, also an associate at Ingram Micro. And my job is I handle Microsoft security, focusing on Microsoft 365.
Thank you, Kyle, and thank you, Sly. There's a lot of, I'll say, complexity and differences in the Microsoft O365 and M365 licenses. I think I'll start with maybe some high-level questions, high-level general questions, and then we could get into the details. But just to kind of frame the audience, a lot of firms will say maybe fall under the 300-person barrier for the differences in the licenses, but may need some of the features that come with the enterprise one. So I think we'll try and get those questions answered, but let me go at a high level, and maybe Kyle, you could hit on this. What are M365 and O365?
Yeah, great question, Jim. Generally at a high level, we'll start with pillars that everything falls under. The first pillar in there is obviously those Office applications that everybody is really familiar with and comfortable with, including your Word, Excel, Outlook, PowerPoint. Important to note that in Office 365, that those licenses are actually licensed per user and not per device as it was traditionally. In addition to that, with those subscriptions, users will have the ability to download those Office applications on up to 5 different devices, which can be a huge value, obviously. The second pillar is Exchange. There's Office and then there's Exchange, which describes those email services that I'm sure you're familiar with. With the Business Exchange plans, the primary mailbox size is 50 gigabytes, although more storage and more capabilities can be added on with some of the enterprise plans. The third pillar is Microsoft Teams, formerly known as Skype for Business, with the end of life coming up next year in 2021. But Microsoft Team, obviously huge focus, it's as relevant as ever, but that's going to include your instant messaging and business chat, your online meetings and conference calls, desktop sharing, file sharing across teams and projects. A lot of capabilities in that pillar. And then that fourth pillar is SharePoint Online. That's going to include access to document storage, empowering businesses to share and work together, do it securely, have their individual storage and share it, and the ability to work with extranet sites for those businesses. So that's Office 365 at a glance. Microsoft 365 at Advance is going to include Office 365, everything in there, in addition to a whole host of enterprise mobility and security products. Just a few off the top of my head: Microsoft Intune, Azure Active Directory Premium, lots of security and device management features wrapped into those, in addition to the Windows Enterprise Suite and the ability to upgrade rights to Windows 10. So a lot of value in there, and hopefully that gives a high-level overview of what's included.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, and we definitely want to hit on some of the security features and Windows Enterprise in this podcast. Can you, Kyle, talk a little bit about some of the rebranding that's gone on with O365 Business and what it was called, what it's now called?
Yeah, absolutely. So in April 2020, Microsoft, simply just a name rebranding of a lot of those Office 365 business plans. A lot of good documentation out there, but as a reminder, Office 365 Business Essentials, now Microsoft 365 Business Basic. Office 365 Business Premium is now Microsoft 365 Business Standard. And then that traditional, that hero SKU, Microsoft 365 Business, including some of those EMS and then Windows 10 Pro upgrades, is now Microsoft 3M. So you're seeing a shift from that Office 365, those older naming conventions, to everything in Microsoft 365, right? It's all getting centralized. And then two important things to note: that the Office 365 Business, which used to be those business apps, and Office 365 Pro Plus, which used to be the enterprise apps, are now Microsoft 365 apps for business and apps for enterprise. So everything Microsoft 365 naming convention. No price changes, no feature changes, simply just those surface names.
Okay. Can you say that again about the difference between Office Suite, and you said it used to be called Pro Plus, now it's Enterprise? I'm sorry, can you repeat that part?
Yeah, absolutely. So Office 365 Business, which was traditionally just the ability to download those applications, is now Microsoft. And the traditional, formerly named Office 365 Pro Plus, is now Microsoft 365 Apps for Enterprise. And there's some important things to note in there between those. Those refer to those Office applications. And I think Sly can touch on a few of these, but a few main differences is the amount of users. And Jim, you mentioned it earlier. Anything with the business side, so apps for or less users, there's a limit on the number of users that can be licensed for that in an organization, whereas the apps for enterprise could be 300 and up for those larger organizations. And there's some additional features on the enterprise side, especially in Excel with some data analytics and security pieces. And then another big difference, and I believe there was a question we're going to answer. We're going to answer. Kind of jump to here, but there is with Office 365 Pro Plus, now named Microsoft 365 Apps for Enterprise, allows the ability to run Office on virtual desktops hosted on Windows servers running RDS and remote desktop services. So those two main differences, I think, are a lot of the reasons we see folks going from that the apps for business to apps for business to apps for enterprise.
Yeah, and I'll just add a few things in there. Is just two more things that I found that customers want to look at Microsoft 365 Apps for Enterprise is the app telemetry, so they can see exactly how the app performance is and how users are leveraging it. And also the business intelligence features, right? Again, getting intelligence around these applications and how your users are using it. That's a big reason why I've been seeing customers making the switch from Microsoft 365 Apps for Business and migrating that over to Microsoft 365 Apps for Enterprise.
Okay, great. That's a great point. A good transition, Sly. Maybe you could talk a little bit about, because I know that there's plenty of law firms that are under 300 users that may need or benefit from the Windows Enterprise license. Can you talk a little bit about why a firm, maybe they're under 300, would buy the enterprise license? Maybe there's some features, I think Kyle just referenced, of running virtual desktop. What licenses?
Oh, so that's a really great question. One of the things I like to talk about here is credential protection. So that's one of the features from a security standpoint that really helps organizations, and especially law firms, because credential protection or credential guard is a specific feature that's not a part of device guard. And what it does is isolates and hardens your systems and your user secrets against compromise. So why would you want that? Because it's going to minimize the impact of password pass the hash type attacks. Or if there's an event where that a malicious code is already running on your local or network-based vector, it can protect you running on your local or network-based vector. It can protect you from that. And then also you have things such as endpoint detection and response. So you can leverage Windows Defender Enterprise or ATP, and that's going to give you like machine learning. So it can monitor behaviors of your users, and because you just won't get that for business because those features aren't offered. You might say, Sly, what else does it offer me? If that's it, I might, it might not be worth it to move up. But usually customers like those two features. Another thing I like to say is desktop analytics. So you can get powerful insights and recommendations about your computers, applications, drivers, monitors, and deployment process. So that's another thing that I see. And the two more things that I see, and because there's a few more even after that, is virtual desktop use rights, and also Microsoft user experience virtualization. And what is that, right? Capturing user and customized Windows and application settings, and then store them on a centrally managed network. So some of those features are some of the features that I see the most. And one that I'm starting to see more frequently is the integration in Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So you can have a unified integrated management platform for managing all your endpoints. So those are, even if a company is under 300 users, those features sell itself, right? And why a lot of law firms actually make the switch from Pro to Enterprise.
Okay. Yeah, actually, I think you read my mind. It was one of my next questions is what type of CALs or other features. You hit on it a little bit about their features. You hit on it a little bit about the machine learning for Windows Defender. And I think traditionally people have antivirus software that's signature based and antivirus software that's machine learning. So it's interesting that Microsoft now has Defender that has that sort of artificial intelligence in it. What are some of the other product. I don't even have to name the third-party products, but like capabilities that a law firm may have gone out and bought a third-party product for, and now it's built into their M365 or O365 licenses?
That's an excellent question. So the one that I see often is mobile device management and application management. So you no longer need that. Business Premium, E3, E5 all come with Intune. And Intune is Microsoft mobile device management and application management solution. And the great thing, it comes with your license already, and you don't have to buy anything else. Another thing that I think is very imperative, and especially during these times, is since all of our users, or most of our users, are working remote, email security. So such as things as protecting and scanning attachments, safe links, domain spoofing, encrypting your actual emails. Those things are included within the business premium license, as well as the E3 license, and in the E5 license, it also is included. And what's even better is that it's really easy to implement, and you don't have to go out and buy another solution. And the last thing is antivirus, right? You can also leverage Windows, the traditional antivirus, but also as a next-gen antivirus. So in the past, some Microsoft customers would have to add on a third-party application for that next-gen authentication. But Windows Defender ATP was actually, that the Windows Endpoint platform is actually rated #1 according to Gartner, and in the top quadrant inside Forrester as well. So the solutions that you're getting aren't just good alternatives. They're great alternatives that you don't need to pay for if you don't need to. So those are some of the ones I like to talk about the most.
That's great. That's great. If I could pick your brains a little bit more about the security features, when I look at a matrix of licenses, I see things labeled as EMS, ATP, Plan 1, Plan 2. Can you help clarify some of those acronyms?
Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, definitely. That's definitely a good one. So the way I do it to simplify, leveraging like some of the Microsoft business suites, such as Microsoft 365 Business Premium, E3, and E5. So when you're looking at Office ATP or Office Advanced Threat Protection, what is that? What does that actually mean? So that is off Microsoft's email security suite of solutions. That's going to be comparative to other third-party email security. When you're taking a look at, maybe if you're looking at identity access management, like what does that actually mean? Or AD Plan 1. So that's Microsoft's identity access management solution. So you're going to have things such as Azure Active Directory, Azure MFA, conditional access. So not only can you do 2FA, you can take in different scenarios in your environment. So a great example of this, to clarify it pretty quickly, is now that everyone is remote, how do you just can't block the perimeter of your office anymore.
Right.
How do you protect your user who's at home? And how do you integrate that device and application management solutions succinctly, right? You're going to leverage the identity access management with Intune. And then when we're looking at EMS, so what is EMS and what does it stand for? That's Enterprise Mobility and Security. So when I say EMS, I'm talking about Intune, device management as well as application management, and device management as well as application management. And I'm also talking about the suite of threat protection, identity access management, security solutions from Microsoft. So that's just the umbrella of all the security. So the great thing, to make it really simple to pull everything back together, is Microsoft 365 Business Premium, MS Plan 1. And E3 comes with Plan 1 and E5 comes with Plan 2.
Got it. Okay, great. That helped clarify that. So moving to this more subscription model, it sounds like firms are getting a lot, but there's also these CALs that firms have been buying traditionally. They're exchange CALs, they're SQL CALs, they're SCCM. Kyle talked about virtual desktop earlier. What CALs, I'm not sure if I'm using the right nomenclature, are included with O365 and M365?
So O365, there aren't any CALs. Microsoft Business Standard, no CALs. Business Premium, CALs, there aren't any. So E3, the Microsoft Enterprise license, and E5s, that's where CALs come into play heavily. So for Microsoft 365 E3 and E5, you're going to have Exchange Standard and Enterprise CALs, SharePoint Standard and Enterprise CALs, You're also going to have Skype for Business Standard. And so those are some of those ones you're going to have. And additionally, you're going to have for on-prem cloud rights, such as eCloud Suite. So you're going to have Exchange, SharePoint, Skype, Windows, SCCM, and Windows Rights Management Cloud. And that's coming with that E3 and E5 license.
That's great. That's great. All right, good. That's very helpful. Maybe that's great. That's great. All right, good. That's very helpful. Maybe I'll get back to Kyle for a little bit. You know, why would you buy a business standard basic license and then add on? What would be an example of maybe you don't need the M365 enterprise licenses. Maybe you need the O365, but have some features. Can firms do that?
Yeah, Jim, thanks. That absolutely right. And I think the main piece of that conversation is cost saving, especially in these times. You know, working with strategic partners like Cornerstone.IT and Ingram Micro, we want the best for the end customer and whatever matches their needs for the best price, right? So there is an ability to mix and match some of those licenses. And an example would be, let's say, the M365 Business Standard plan. That's going to include everything in Office 365, your Office download, Exchange, your Teams, your SharePoint, and OneDrive. For it's listed as $1250 MSRP. If they are needing Office 360 for some of those anti-phishing and anti-spoofing Exchange information protection, that's going to be included in some of the more premium plans, such as the M365 Business Premium and E3s and E5s. But I mean, you start talking $30, $50 per user a month. But that Office 365 ATP Plan 1 can be added on for just $2 per user standard plan. So there is ability to mix and match some of those licenses. It's obviously based on the end customer need. Hopefully that kind of presents an example of a way that you can do so and do some cost saving there as well.
And one thing I just add really quickly is you can also base it on use case and user role, right? Because on use case and user role, right? Because maybe a user doesn't need to have advanced threat protection. I see needs for it, right? Maybe they're external user or a guest user who you just want to protect, but they're not going to be using email, right? So you might not want to protect them with that. So you might want to switch. Not want to protect them with that. So you might want to switch. Or a better example is if, like, I have certain accounts, like our executives accounts, they might have an E5 license just because we want to make sure that they have all the security features to encrypt those licenses, right? Or you can just do it on type. So like we work with they might have manufacturer workers that don't need the full suite. They can switch those licenses in and out, you know, so.
Yeah, and actually I've got a customer of ours that's a good example, similar example, where they have contractors that need firm email addresses and need the security, but don't need the full suite. These contractors are doing e-work or pre-sales research. And so I guess that's a good example of where you mentioned the manufacturing floor, but where you have some contractors working for the law firms that don't need the whole suite, so maybe they buy the lesser license. Kyle, you hit on Teams. I do want to wrap up the call with one or two more questions, but you hit on Teams earlier. Does Teams come with Live and M365, and what's the differences? Because I think it's the E5 that includes some call plans that may be interesting for some firms.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So generally, Microsoft Teams licensing and access to all of the features are included in almost all of the plans, with the smallest of those apps for business and apps for enterprise, where you're just getting those applications. But anything from that Microsoft 365 Business Basic all the way up to M365 E5 is going to include Teams access for each of those users. That's going to be, chat, calling, OneDrive, and file sharing and collaboration. Some additional add-on and file sharing and collaboration. Some additional add-ons and gaining in popularity. We've had a lot of conversations here, especially with the remote working environment we find ourselves in. More and more conversations around audio conferencing add-ons. So there's an ability to add a dial-in number to any Teams meetings for any non-Teams users to call into that meeting with a phone number. To call into that meeting with a phone number. So that's an add-on, but it's also included in the E5 plans. In the E5 plan, Jim, I think this might be what you were referencing, is also included a phone system, which is going to be a traditional online PBX phone system for each of those users, wrapped and integrated right into that Office 365 and Teams environment. There's two things you can do with that, right? And one would be to bring and direct route current calling plans into that PBX phone system integrated into Office 365, or available as an add-on to all plans now is a calling plan. So you can actually get domestic and international calling plans on that Teams PBX phone system as an add-on. So a lot of value there, wrapping it all in, having it integrated into one system inside of Teams, and we're seeing more and more of those conversations taking place with end customers.
Super, that's great. Let me ask one last question. I think you already answered it directly or indirectly. So firms have a lot of different options on what they can buy and whether they buy the O365 and add on. But I'm assuming you can mix and match, right? I mean, a firm may want certain licenses for certain type of users and so other licenses. I guess the question is, can you mix and match?
Yeah, great question. And the short answer is yes, absolutely. They're what we call them, some people call them super users, where some of your executives, your IT administrators, people handling sensitive information day to day, they're probably going to look towards those M365 SKUs that include some of that device and information protection. Whereas, some contract workers, like you mentioned, some frontline workers that aren't necessarily handling day-to-day information or aren't needing some of those can get separate plans. So you don't need to lock in, one plan for an entire organization. A lot of value there. Another really important thing to note and reminder is that these can actually, in Microsoft CSP and in the cloud, these can be monthly subscriptions where you can scale up, scale down, transition into a new SKU, at any time, and it true ups. And especially now with remote working, or if you're bringing in contractors for certain 3-month projects, 6-month projects, you don't need to lock into a 3-year agreement. You don't need to pay for a full annual subscription up front, and there's some cost savings and value there. So hopefully that answers your question.
That was really, guys, this was very helpful. I know there's a lot of firms that are looking at different licensing options. There's a lot of information out there. Hopefully this answered a number of their questions. If anybody has any questions who's listening to the podcast, please feel free to email me at jim.moreo, that's MOREO, at Cornerstone, CORNERSTONE.IT. Happy to answer any questions. Happy to bring in Kyle and Sly if need be. I wanted to thank Nicole and her team from ILTA for setting this up, and Adriana, our wonderful marketing manager, for keeping us on point. And thank you. And again, let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
You've been listening to ILTA podcasts through iTunes or Podbean and get alerted about new recordings. ILTA Radio. Get tuned in.